Yeah, I feel because of the timing, I just, when we set the date, it's actually tomorrow's my birthday, so I don't do anything tomorrow.
Well, that's right. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You mentioned that. That's great.
Yeah. And, we've had on a regular basis up until October, Franco Di Nicola. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He transitioned in October, and he's been with us a couple of years. We did about 50 shows, and his intel is very similar to yours. In fact, you both have very similar makeup. And I don't know, with him being gone, and we've had some great shows since then. And he's, of course, working with us on the other side of the veil.
Sure.
And but I just thought, wow, her coming on at this time with everything that's happened, I'm excited about that because I know that you've got, solid intel. And plus, I've been watching your vlogs, Morgan and I, and they're just on the money. So I'm anxious to see what you've got, coming in and that type of thing. Let's see. Okay, we're good. We'll give another 20 seconds or so. Let's see. I'm just going to pull up the comments on my page just in case there's something to. Here we go. All right. Okay. So, welcome everybody. It's good to see you. I'm a little disheveled. My youngest of 6 came in to visit last night, so it's been quite an activation seeing her, 19 years old, and got the world on the string. These young people are just amazing. They just have a frequency. They don't even know it. Just being around them, it's like being around a tuning fork. But it's a pleasure to have Patricia here again. This is the second time she's been on. We had a huge response. I think when I added up all the different platforms, there was near 80 or 90,000 views with the previous show that we did, and still getting replays on them. But for those of you who don't know Patricia, she's been in this game a long, long, long time. A lot of people that I've connected with over the last few years are very familiar with her, and I wasn't familiar with her until the last show. But I've been watching her Monday vlogs, and they're very good. I like them because they're concise and they're substantial. So it's a good place to start off your Mondays. If you haven't checked it out, Patricia's YouTube, her vlogs every Monday. Welcome back, Patricia. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you, Todd. I'm very grateful to be here.
Well, let's jump right into it. We've only got an hour, and I know your time is precious. I'm just going to give a little backdrop. I don't know if my experience, I think to a degree it matches everybody's, obviously, but your vlogs seem to pretty much identify what's happening. But I remember this all kind of started in October. Of course, this has been a heck of a year. And it was the first part of October. I want to say maybe 10/10. I don't remember if there was eclipses or full moons or whatever, but it just seemed like we went through a real purification in October, leading us into November, which seemed to be worthiness, judgments, lessening. I mean, it just seems like there's some really positive signs, regardless of the distortion that's going on in the world, in terms of personal individual expansion. And as we know, which comprises the collective soul, let's just put it that way. And of course, December has started off, really powerful. These days, it seemed to have 1s and 2s in them, like 12, December 1st, December 2nd. We've got the 10th, 11th, 12th coming. Of course, we've got the solstice. We got we just went through a second eclipse. So there's so many things happening. And it just seems like, the distortion's getting louder, but the individual awareness and expansion and all of the skills, abilities, and higher sensitivities that parallel that growth seems to be happening at the same pace. And it's really kind of strange. But anyway, that's kind of the backdrop where I'm coming from. I don't know if you can confirm any of that or add to that or whatever you want to do, but we're all ears.
Well, it's absolutely the truth. And interestingly, in the outer world, some of the world religions acknowledge today as the day of the celebration of Mother Mary's Immaculate Conception. And sometimes that's confused with thinking that's when she conceived Jesus, but it's really a celebration of when she was conceived. Not that we can, I imagine, know exactly what that date was, but the celebration is meaning that she was immaculately conceived, meant that she was coming in. The term, the religious term, is without original sin, but it really means coming in karma free to really begin her life. But the immaculate concept that she holds for all of us is the divine blueprint. And all of the things that you've been mentioning, I mean, we have moved into now the full embrace of a life transforming new decade. And literally miracles are going to be occurring during this decade. And the immaculate concept of that divine plan indicates, according to our Father, Mother, God, and the company of heaven, that in this 10-year period from 2020 to 2030, which is like a jump start of real transformation on the planet, is that we are literally going to be changing the course of history for this planet. And the beings of light have said that a cosmic dispensation was granted by our Father, Mother, God, that is allowing the company of heaven, all of the legions of light throughout infinity, to intervene in our lives in ways that was not even previously allowed by cosmic law. And that is what their terms that they have used, is that the collaboration between heaven and earth for this transformation in this decade has never before been attempted. And what that means literally is that, and the reason it has occurred is because of the transformation and the awakenings that have taken place within humanity. And what you're talking about in the outer world, you know, we've talked about that before, and I know that everybody is aware of that there's such separation and such duality, and that is truly just the negativity coming to the surface. And what's very interesting to me is that when we lift above that us against them, that duality, the grievances, the victim consciousness, and all of that, even the extremes on both sides are very much striving for that highest divine potential. And it's interesting because in the lower consciousness, it looks like night and day, like they couldn't possibly be working toward the same thing. But in my personal experience with our connections around the world, which with Era of Peace, with our nonprofit organization, and we've been doing this since I've been connecting with and beginning this process since 1968. You and I've talked about that before, but this shifting, what is taking place in the outer world, is that in our organization, there are, I think, probably just as many people on both extremes of that spectrum. And you'd never think that they could align with the spiritual movement forward and be as diverse in the outer world as they are, but they are. And so all of that, you know, whether we're talking about the, you know, political or socioeconomic or whatever it is in the outer world, even the things going on with the medical and COVID and all of that, we're being asked, and this is the immaculate concept of the new 2022 that we're moving toward, we're being asked to really raise above that consciousness and to focus on the reality of the changes that are taking place. And since the birth of this new decade in 2020, literally life-transforming events have taken place within the earthly bodies of every person at an atomic cellular level. And we have reached this collective consciousness so that this is occurring through the divinity within each person, through the I am presence, even if they are not consciously aware of it, because we've reached this critical mass. And if we could just understand that just for a minute, we talk about the oneness of all life, and there's no such thing as separation and duality. And sometimes we think of this divine love as being kind of a sentimental, emotional, sweet sentiment, but it is actually the mightiest force in the universe. And what is happening now is that we are beginning to connect with this knowing and this understanding. And a critical mass, just so that we can all be on the same level of understanding. In quantum mechanics, when we talk about electrons and energy and frequencies of vibration, everything is made up of energy, vibration, and consciousness. And when an electron is raising the vibration, I've been around a long time, so I remember when the scientists used to talk about this, when they were first discovering this. They would observe the electron rising in vibration, and the moment it reached the critical mass of the higher vibration, the energy from the higher frequency would absorb the remaining vibration, and it would create an unstoppable shift, and the electron would disappear in the lower frequency and reappear in the higher frequency. This is what is occurring that's creating these shifts of the earth ascending up the spiral of evolution as we move through the shift of the ages. But what has happened now that is allowing this mass shift going on within the masses of humanity through their God self, their I am presence, is that the collective energy, vibration, and consciousness of humanity, the collective cup of our consciousness, which includes every man, woman, and child belonging to or serving the earth at this time, whether he or she is in or out of embodiment even, every man, woman, and child has reached this collective shift of consciousness of divine love. And I know when we look at the outer world, that seems impossible. But the reason this is occurring is because light is infinitely more powerful than all of the fragmented fear-based consciousness. So there are all kinds of variables and things that determine when something's going to reach a critical mass. But what the company of heaven has said for us to think about is that think of it as 51% in order. When 51% of the energy, vibration, and consciousness of the masses reaches a frequency of divine love, it creates a quantum shift. The other 49% of the collective consciousness of humanity is absorbed, and the entire consciousness of humanity is raised into this frequency of divine love. So when you talk about light being infinitely more powerful, divine love, the mightiest force in the universe, is, of course, is infinitely more powerful than the fragmented, fear-based, hateful kinds of things that are going on in the lower consciousness of humanity. So collectively, we have now reached this quantum collective shift into divine love. So these things that are happening through the I am presence, because of the oneness of all life, are literally able to happen now through the cellular structures of every person on Earth. And it affects each one differently, uniquely, according to what our experiences are, where we are in consciousness. But it is occurring within every person through their I am presence in perfect alignment with their divine plan and their highest good. So somebody really aligned with divine love and working predominantly through that frequency is going to be able to receive a higher influx of that light without blowing their circuits. than someone who's really caught up in the negativity.
Right.
But nevertheless, that person caught up in the negativity, in every moment that they are peaceful, or they are loving, or they are gentle, or adding to the light of the world, and everybody does throughout the day, some of the time even, that's when their I am presence just floods them with this frequency of divine love. So this is an awakening that's taking place kind of under the radar for the masses of humanity, that's causing us to be able to co-create these incredible shifts that you're talking about, Todd, that are happening right now at this very moment.
Yes, what a great summation. I think she just summed up the last 700 shows this year without anyone actually explaining it that way. But it was such a great synopsis of what's happening at so many different levels. One of the things that I really want to just kind of restate or reaffirm is what you said in regard to those that play roles that may seem polar opposite to us. This is something that I've mentioned on this show many times, like, how do we not know that there are folks on the other side of the spectrum that are not receiving the same type of guidance and downloads that we are, with direction, but with purpose, above the perception of, say, just a 3D standalone type of consciousness or comprehension. So, I mean, this seems to be materializing as well, because I've noticed, although there still is, a little bit of projection back and forth, obviously, that's, you can just see the frequency that you're talking about setting in. As an example, I have a friend who's very funny and who tends to be kind of warrior-esque. And she was telling me a couple of months ago how she can't even be that way anymore, that she's wondering why she has all this peace going on. And I thought that was a really good anecdote or example of what's happening. And you also mentioned last time that you were on here, we talked about, because at the time it was a little bit different, although it was still on the same trajectory, just 6 months, whatever it was ago. And that's in regard to the energetic understanding and reality of free soul, free movement, unimpeded soul progress, whether we can see that or not. But the point being, in terms of how we're embodying things on this earth, and at the heart of it, you said something that stuck with me. I don't know if I could even quote any of the rest of that show we did, but I asked you, what do you think will happen with these borders and with these travel restrictions, et cetera? And you said, I think you said, very humbly, I don't know exactly how this will go, but a soul is free and has to be in an expanding realm. Obviously, that freedom is going to expand as well. And that's something that we could very well see in terms of our physical experience as the soul embodies into the human. Just to follow up on that, because there's been more restrictions. There's a lot of countries really starting to shut down. This is not about getting caught up in the chaos. We obviously all here understand that. But I'm just curious because I see the alleviation of the, let's just say, the antagonistic type of energy. I see it just dissolving. And it looks like it's kind of on automatic pilot, like that 51%, maybe that occurred in October. I don't know, but I just know that everything seemed to really shift dramatically since then. But in terms of what we might see, you said this is a decade of miracles. I totally agree. And they feel like they're could be 10 days away, 10 weeks away. But this freedom of the soul, this in the physicality, I would take that to mean that we're talking teleportation, bilocation, dematerialization, rematerialization, and things that are way beyond our once human standalone perceived comprehension level of what we could or couldn't do, what's supernatural. Are these the type of things that you're talking about, or things like it?
Certainly things like that. Ultimately, we're a ways away from that yet, because there has to be a different shift of consciousness. But what you're talking about is very much this awareness that we're moving toward, and the freedom of the soul is very much part of the immaculate concept of the divine plan that we're even moving in toward 2022. As I've been sharing in the blogs and this, there is a 40-day, we're in the midst of this 40-day period, and we'll talk about that in detail in a few minutes, but literally beginning on November 11th and building in momentum, we have reached this frequency of vibration. We completed that shift in October, as you're mentioning, that allowed us to begin this 40-day purging process under the direction of the company of heaven. And this involves humanity, the elemental kingdom, and Mother Earth. And the beings of light said it specifically involves the dismantling, the crumbling away, and the dissolving of all of the old paradigms and archetypes that have manipulated, controlled, and suppressed the masses of humanity for eons of time. And all of those frequencies, all of that old energy has been perpetuated and sustained through the consciousness of separation and duality. And the behavior that sustains that level of consciousness is hatred, suppression, greed, corruption, all of the ignorance and abuse of power, and anything that is not based in love. So those frequencies are now, the archetypes that sustain those frequencies are crumbling and dissolving away. And you know, at the beginning of the show, Todd, you were talking about your daughter coming and how special these kids are. That's so perfect for what I'm going to share with you right now. There is billions of souls on this planet that were born after the shift of consciousness that took place in 1987. And they are known throughout the universe as, these are all of the souls, the vast majority. There have been light workers and higher beings that have come in with these souls to guide and help direct them. But since 1987, the vast majority of souls born on this planet, which as logically include billions in every country of the world, all over the planet, have come in. They're known throughout the universe as the holy innocents, and they're coming in karma-free. And just the very little bit of history about these souls is that when we had our fall from grace and literally bent the axis of the earth and fell off of the spiral of evolution into this miscreated mass that we've called the wheel of karma, in order to prevent these holy innocents, these new souls coming in, from getting pulled and sucked into that and trapped in that as all the rest of us were, our Father, Mother God asked that they be held in the temples around the electronic belts around the central sun until humanity could shift our energy enough to raise off the wheel of karma back onto the spiral of evolution. And that miracle literally occurred through the events that took place at harmonic convergence in 1987. So these souls, while they were in the inner realms, that took much longer than anybody expected, but they were in there for eons of time. They were growing and learning and developing as sons and daughters of God. And their I am presence took all that knowledge, because they knew they were coming into this contaminated earth for this unique experiment to assist the earth in transforming. Never has a planet that's fallen this far into the abyss of separation and duality been given the opportunity to move forward this quickly into the light through the shift of consciousness and awakening of the masses of humanity on the planet. So this was the experiment. So these souls knew they were coming in. So their training was bringing in knowledge that contains the viable solutions to all of the maladies existing on Earth, and ways of helping to awaken humanity and to help in the process. And that training was encoded into what was called consciousness codes and encoded in their DNA for when they would embody on Earth and when that would awaken. Well, in 2018, actually, is when we had reached a vibration collectively on this planet that the consciousness codes of these souls, billions of souls all over the planet, young people, the millennials and those on down to infancy, were activated so that they could start receiving this information. Now, of course, looking at the outer world, not all of the young people are out picturing the kind of behavior that you would think these enlightened souls would, because they did get trapped and overwhelmed by some of the oppressive energy and the manipulation and the control. And, we have free will and we have the ability to do this. But the vast majority of them are now standing in readiness, awaiting the responsibility of becoming stewards of the earth, taking over leadership, transformational positions. And they're going to begin this process of literally the changing of the guard, of the old guard, with the activities that begin in 2022. And the reason they're able to begin now at this level is because the old paradigms, the matrices that sustained greed and corruption, the abuse of power, the war consciousness, hate, us against them, all of that, those matrices are being dissolved, dismantled, and crumbling away. So this is all over the world. So right now, what's happening, for instance, when you're talking about the bans and the immigration and all of the people that are fleeing their countries because of abuse of power and all of that, these precious souls are everywhere. And when they begin awakening, which they're in the process of doing now, but now that the old manipulative control is being removed, and it's being removed through love. It's being loved into the light. This isn't a negative battle that's going on, not a war, but they are being loved back into the light. Some of them are kicking and screaming as they're being dragged into the light, but that's the process. But just as an example, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody because I don't know for sure, but the vast majority of all of the immigration and all of the people fleeing their countries, the vast majority of them would much prefer to remain in their own countries with their own cultures, if they could be safe, if they could be prosperous, if they could have the healthcare and the jobs and all of the comforts that everybody has on the planet that is comfortable in their own country and isn't fleeing. So that would automatically solve this problem of mass integration. Everybody in the United States or everybody on the planet isn't supposed to move to the United States, but each and every one of us in the United States, if our children and our lives were threatened and there was total destruction and no place for us to live and no way for us to feed our children or support our families, we'd be doing the same thing. So we can't have this holier than thou attitude.
Absolutely.
So this is going to free souls from the manipulation and the oppression. It's going to free them all over the world as these souls start taking charge, creating new positive social structures that have win-win situations that aren't this us against them and this greed of looking out for number one and dog eat dog, all of the things that have created all of the problems. We can see it in our political systems, we can see it in our economic systems, even with what's going on like in the agricultural industry, the polluting of our food, our water pollution, air pollution, all of that abuse of power, all of that. These young people have the heart, they have the willingness, they have the intention, and they have encoded with them in their collective consciousness the viable solutions to those maladies, bringing in new kinds of energy, new ways of growing food that don't have to have pesticides and all of the pollution, ways of eliminating all of the greed that's associated with the big corporate structure that has been willing to pollute our water and to pollute our air and all of that just for the sake of money. And everything that's gone on in the pharmaceutical industry, every structure in the outer world has been manipulated and controlled by what has been referred to as this old guard. And now this is going to begin to really, really shift